Talk about what's happening in Beaver County or around the world on Teleforum. 724-843-1888. 724-774-1888. It's Teleforum with Eddie Crow.
It is Teleforum, and here's how this works. I don't know. I suspect it's the same way at your work. When your boss comes knocking on the door, you go, "Oh, hey, boss, how you doing? You want to come on the radio?" "Sure."
Me.
Well, yes, deep down it is, and
Okay, good.
I play hard to get. Mark Peterson is my guest, but Mark Peterson has a guest.
Yes,
Mr.
we have a very
Day.
special guest here today.
This is a big announcement.
And I like to use the term, Eddie, that I've had the pleasure of working with you.
Oh, that's so nice.
You're right, but you're right, Eddie, and there's a special reason for the show,
Mhm.
and there was some announcements that hit the press yesterday. And we wanted to do it right here. So back about 2 years ago, I went on a sales call out to the folks at St. Barnabas,
Right.
and the CEO out there, and he's right here to my left, Mr. William Day. He was so excited about all the airtime. He says, "How much is it, Mark, if we buy all of the commercials, all of the airtime?" I said, "Whoa."
Just lock, stock, and barrel.
The lock, stock, and barrel and
Okay.
everything. And over the course of time, we had many conversations, and eventually we arrived at the conclusion that, it seemed like they wanted it and needed it more than me. So a little while ago, we did, St. Barnabas has bought our radio stations here.
So I'm looking at my former boss and my current boss.
Right. So,
You saw me sit up straight when you guys came
Right.
in, right?
Right. You want to keep the mic levels especially good on that mic over there now, Eddie.
I'm right. It's going to sound like the White Album. It's going to be mixed perfect.
But we're excited for people, and we're going to give Bill a chance to talk here in a second, but for people who don't know, and the reason why I say we're excited is he's a local guy. Mr. Dave grew up in Rochester. He was a member of Grace Lutheran Church. He has some other details to share, but I view it like, this is a Beaver County guy, much like you and me, Eddie.
Yeah.
Coming back home to run the radio stations again. So I guess with no further ado, I've done too much talking, Bill. This is about you. Tell us about your thoughts here.
It's about you, and it's great to be here with both of you. It really is.
Thank you.
And it, as we walked through the studio today, I brought back a lot of thoughts. I still see pictures of Waxy Wilson, and we were great friends over the years, along with Ernie Klein and a lot of others. But it's a very exciting day. It's a very important day.
It is. It's real exciting. And Eddie, here's a fun piece of trivia.
Okay.
Mr. Day here is the sixth person who started their careers here at WBVP or WMBA, and I'm aware of 417 of them that has gone on to own their own radio stations. And Bill, or Mr. Day, I think, as he prefers to be called, Bill is the CEO as the CEO and president of St. Barnabas Health System and then St. Barnabas Broadcasting. So he now becomes one of those, pride of WBVP, the ones that went on to do their own thing, because he worked here from 1955 to 1961, if I recall.
You're
and
right.
tell us about what did you do then? What was it like?
Well, it was a curious route to get here, in a sense. I'd gotten to know Frank Smith a little bit, and then
Frank would have been the original. He was the founding partner.
he was a founding partner.
And then a short while into his tenure, he took on two other partners, and that would be Tom Price and Charles Underka. And you worked with all three of those guys, right?
I did, yeah, and a fun time. I mean, they were mentors for me, if you will, and very successful. And in fact, as I'm sure you recall, Mr. Smith, that's what I called him in those days. He also started a bank. So
You're correct. Right over here, and then we went and rented off of him, I believe, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, from the.
Oh, there were great people here. I mean, they really were, and had influence on me. Did I know at that time that someday we would do what we've done, and that I would be really a part of all this? No, but always liked radio,
Okay.
and still do, and like the people who are involved with it. It's just it's an important part of my life, and this is a real milestone.
When you got out the first time and went on to do what I would call your life's work
Sure.
with St. Barnabas,
Right.
was that always in the back of your mind that you wanted to come back one day and reconnect with that, or was it happenstance? And it's a weird addiction, radio. You're right.
It is. It is. Well, I had.
There is no cure.
Oh no! If there was a cure, I'd have been gone
There's
years
no-
ago. Yeah.
There is no cure. That's right. No, my first real interest in radio was because of a crystal set, and I know I'll say that to some people, and I know you're nodding about this.
Yeah.
But
The build it at home stuff.
exactly right.
Yeah.
And my parents gave me that, and it was kind of the oddest thing. Now, when I say crystal set, they think we're talking about China or some place setting
Right.
in a dining room or something. But no, to be able to pick up WBVP and KDKA in those days
Mm-hmm.
by connecting a wire to a water pipe and then putting on earphones was like, what? How could
Yeah.
that possibly be? And so my interest goes back that far, and I've never lost that. In fact, what I want to do is try to find either a replica or an actual old crystal set, and someday I'll do that. But you probably have one.
We
in
have
your-
one in the window from the
Is there?
from the 1920s, and we don't have the crystals for it, but
Well, that's true.
Same thing. You
But then
plug
the
in the
cat's
headphones.
whisker and all
Yeah.
those
Mhm.
kinds of things you have to have with it.
What connected you? The notion that somebody on a completely different part of the earth is talking in a room and I can hear it, or was it just was it the wonder of the technology, or was it the information? Because everybody that's I call us radio geeks. Everybody gets drawn into it for a different reason. Was it the wonder of I can listen to somebody and they're 400 or 500 miles away, especially if you're talking about a KDKA signal?
Right.
They could be in a different state. It's like, oh my God, that's so great.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's really all of those things.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a voice out there somehow, some way
Mm-hmm.
that I can connect with that, and it could conceivably connect with me, and so I was fascinated by it. So I still am fascinated by it because it's out there someplace. It's this amazing sound, and we can. In fact, I was saying something to somebody the other day about who was the World War II woman star, female star, who helped us win the war, and ultimately her technology is part of our cell phones in all these days. I had only heard it one other time, and I was reminded of it a week ago.
wow. So there's a lady who
Yes.
participated in the war effort
Right.
and
And she was a very
created
big
something
star.
that
Very big star, and she was not trained in technology. Do you know who I'm talking about?
My first reaction is Tippi Hedren, but I don't think that's right.
That's not right.
That's not right.
That's not right. So if you were on,
I think I had to study this in school, and I studied it just long enough to pass the quiz. Who
Now,
was
this
it?
isn't Rosie the Riveter, right?
no, that's
Okay,
right,
yeah.
because a lot of people suggest that.
Okay.
And I said, no, it wasn't Rosie the Riveter. But, and in fact, this past week, one of our staff members, I said, you know who that was? Well, and then he eventually looked it up. But most people don't know and kind of remember this lady as starring with another big star. So you want me to give you the answer?
It's gonna. You better, because it's gonna drive me crazy.
Well, that's not a drive, that's a short putt. You've heard all those things before. But
That's true.
No, it's Hedy Lamarr.
Ah,
Hedy Lamarr.
I flash
And-
back. Yeah.
And she would overhear people in her father's home,
Mhm.
but she had no formal training in electronics and any of that. And yet part of what she put together to help defeat the Nazis in World War II, we are using
Same
in our
technologies
phone.
in a cell phone. Wow. That's amazing.
I mean, it's the most unlikely person, and the Naval Department didn't want to have anything to do with her because it did not, and I'm not throwing rocks at the Naval Department,
Right.
but it did not come up with this technology. But
They
this-
didn't understand
but
how to
she-
use a cell phone at that stage of the game, right?
there were none.
And they probably, their
Nice
attitude
try.
was, if we couldn't come up with it, how can we trust
That's
some
exactly
starlet to
right.
come up with it?
That's
Oh,
exactly
yeah,
the
yeah.
point. And then it was, well, maybe she wasn't as pure and clean as, because in those days there was Tokyo Rose.
Right.
And wasn't there somebody else from Germany? But I can't think of it right now. But at any rate, there were 3 women who played a big role. One on our side, if you will,
Right.
and then the others for the
Oh,
Japanese
wow.
and other people and the Germans. Yeah, fascinating kind of stuff. So, but it's radio.
What did you think when the internet came along? Because you had the background of Hedy Lamarr and voices coming from somewhere else.
Right.
When you looked at the internet, did you think this is a wonderful extension, or did you think this is going to dilute the purity, I guess, of what it was before, make it too easy?
I didn't believe it. I know that's hard to say, and I had a friend still. Well, he's retired now, but he was in television, and he kept telling me it's going to be this and that, and I really didn't believe that. I thought a lot of what we accept today and what I accept today,
Right.
I didn't think that would happen. The radio part of it, I believe. The communications, the way it's been developed, I didn't really think that would happen.
Have we as a society gotten too dependent on technology because it's easy? It's video. Stan Freberg years ago said radio is the big screen. You're only limited by the capabilities of your imagination.
Right.
Television, whatever the picture is, that's great, but there's a box around it.
Right. The image is made for
Right. The image is here, and there is a finite edge on each side of the image.
Sure.
And radio's the big screen. If you can create like the old radio dramas, those were far more mesmerizing than when you would actually see the things when they came on. The Lone Ranger on television was far less interesting than it was on radio.
Right. I was enamored, still am enamored with the old time radio, if you will, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
because they had to make the sound effects. They weren't real sound effects.
Now, Foley
And-
artists.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it just like really, there's somebody's standing or sitting. I think they stood most of the time
Hmm.
in front of a microphone, and there's other kinds of things, music and the clashing of cymbals or
The thunder
hoof
from the
beats.
sheet metal and the
Yeah.
breaking of the celery and all that.
I thought that took real imagination, and I remember sitting at home and staring at the face of radio, if you will, and it drove me a little crazy. I thought, this is wonderful, because I had to use my imagination to visualize, if you will,
Right.
what was on radio. Loved it, still do. Still
Why
do.
didn't it fade? Because human beings, by nature, if something new comes along, we have a tendency to dismiss the old. Internet's a perfect example of that. Video's a perfect example of that.
Right.
It's easier.
Right.
Human beings, like water, often we take the path of least resistance.
True.
Why didn't it fade for you?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm probably too crazy to have let it go away, but I've liked it.
Yeah.
I like the people around it, like Mark and other people, and you, people who.
Oh, you just met me. Don't commit.
Right. You gotta,
Well, but it's fascinating, and it takes some thought. And I think there've been a lot of intelligent people involved with both radio and television and communications. Fabulous, and I think we've only scratched the surface.
I would be really curious your answer to this question because I can't answer it and I'm in the middle of it. You talk about the people in radio. How are they different than people walking down the street? Because I know we are. I've been told that. In your mind, how are radio people, the radio geeks, as I say, how are they different?
Well, that's a very good question because I believe they are, and those whom I've been fortunate enough to know in radio, I think the ability to communicate as Mark and I had talked a little earlier about, Mark likes to write. I like to write.
Right.
I think to be able to communicate in a written word is important, but wow, to be able to communicate on an airwave, and to be able to make it interesting enough for someone to pay attention to it, to have the oral skills that we all say, wow, that was pretty good. I think it's so important, and think about our history. We've had a lot of people down through the years who, fortunately, some folks have either written down or we've learned what they've talked about. But these are people who had great oral skills and could communicate and motivate and inspire. And the Bible's full of people like that. And there are many other sources, but the ability to communicate and to motivate people and to get things done orally is, I think, hugely important.
Is it the cultural gift of the storyteller? Because before there was technology, that's whether it was a parable or folklore, that's how history got passed forward. Especially before writing came along, before the Middle Ages, you're talking about an entire population on a planet completely illiterate. They didn't know what just absolutely the only way was to converse. Is it that primal connection going back that far, you think?
Well, I believe so.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it goes back not only to biblical times, it goes back to the Greeks and the Romans. I mean, the Roman Empire was, to my knowledge, there weren't very many newspapers. I don't think there were any at all. Certainly no radio or television.
Took a long time to print, with those chisels and stone tablets.
And
then someone would say, I think there's a typo in the
section.
sports section.
You got to go
do
get
that again.
Yes.
You go get another slab of
again.
Granite for the afternoon edition.
So to go that next step, to
Right.
record something that you can read again or debate again, whatever the case may be, that's a big thing. And we're just simply products of that. Here we are on radio, able to translate, able to communicate what we have in mind. And hopefully that somebody else might agree with it, or it creates the opportunity to debate it and make it better.
Right. So the fun thing here is,
Yes.
you are a radio guy. I think Eddie dared use the term radio geek.
That term I use for myself. Yeah. I am proud to claim it.
Why not?
But St. Barnabas has for the most part, has been a healthcare organization, and
Right.
but you've started this process of diversifying a little while ago, and you showed your radio blood earlier this year. And you purchased WJS in Pittsburgh. So we're actually, Eddie, I guess maybe the second and third radio stations that in WBVP and WMBA that they owns, but this was part of something that I had already interested.
Well, I just saw it. You're exactly right, Mark, and I like the way you said that. I continue to look for ways to communicate, and the printed word is still very important, but is it an opportunity for a place like St. Barnabas, around for 120 years? Is this a way to communicate to hundreds of thousands of people in a simplistic kind of way? Can we do that and be able to serve more people? And that's what St. Barnabas is supposed to do. We're in the business of helping people who need help.
Is there an elegance that radio can provide with communication that video just doesn't?
Wow, that's a great question.
I think
I suppose that's true.
There's simplicity. There's elegance and simplicity to me.
I believe that's true, and there are fewer distractions. And in television, God bless television. I'm glad we have it. But there are more distractions with television. However, with radio, you might be distracted by something, but you can walk around, drive around, do all kinds of things, and still get a message. And through replication, have more and more people hear what we're trying to do. So it's not a one-time, one-off type of thing. We're able to repeat.
Is radio better? I don't want to say subconsciously, but radio, I think, do you think it's better at getting a point across without beating you over the head with bright lights and visuals and you got to watch this, and active versus passive listening? How much more can radio contribute with the passive listening that other mediums can't?
Well, good. The classic example here.
Yeah.
Now, this doesn't work with younger folks, but someone who's 50 or older, if you say to them, sing to me or name me the ingredients of a Big Mac sandwich.
Yep.
And McDonald's had a jingle in the mid-'70s, 1975, that, it was 2 all-beef patties, special sauce.
Lettuce, cheese,
there
pickles, onions on a sesame seed.
Eddie didn't know that was coming today, and look, there it is. The retention of being able to keep words or messages in your mind when it's auditory learning is unparalleled, and that's the advantage. That's why we're still here.
I believe that's true, Mark, and the repetition factor is important. You've been able to retain that jingle and things like that. In fact, you're better at that than I am. I remember some jingles, but a lot I don't. But it's the repetition factor and that's how we tend to learn things, by repeating it over and over.
All right, I am about to do something that in 30 years of radio I've never had to do. I've got, as far as I'm concerned, 2 bosses in front of me, and I'm going to have to tell you we got to take a break. Do you want to stay in? Because, honest to goodness, I'd way rather listen to you two talk about this than me have to babble about masks for another hour, to be completely blunt.
I'm fine. Whatever Mark wants to do.
I guess the big boss has spoken.
Okay. Well,
he's the big boss. He's the one who accomplished this.
Well,
I haven't accomplished anything
I'm
yet.
trying to figure out which one of you I got to hit up for a day off next time.
I didn't hear that. Did you hear that?
I know. It's spoken like...
Well, my guess is if we both approve it, it's 2 days, right?
I double your money. It's Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
Albert's Heating and Air Conditioning.
You really can beat the heat, but only when your air conditioner is working properly. If your HVAC unit needs repair, call Albert's Heating and Air Conditioning in Conway. Albert's is a familiar sight in Beaver County. You'll see their big white trucks everywhere, helping people just like you enjoy the summer the way it was meant to be, cool and comfortable. It's a good feeling to know that Albert's is always there to help, providing experts and years of experience that can't be beat. Albert's is ready to help you 7 days a week. Call them today for repair or a free estimate, and no pressure, at 724-876-0100. Albert's Heating and Air Conditioning in Conway. You really can beat the heat with Albert's. 724-876-0100.
Albert's Heating and Air Conditioning.
We're Beaver County Radio, 1230 WBVP Beaver Falls, 1460 WMBA Ambridge, and also on 99.3 FM, where the listeners of Beaver County have a voice. Teleforum with Eddie Crow, 724-843-1888, 724-774-1888.
AM 1230 WBVP and AM 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, presented by St. Barnabas, and it's being piped live with video all over the planet on our Facebook page. In the studio with me, I don't know if you've noticed, but my tone has become much more professional in the last half hour. Mark Peterson is in the studio with me. Mark Peterson is, well, I'll get to that. Mark Peterson, I think, is still my boss, and William Day from St. Barnabas is here. And the big announcement you made last hour, St. Barnabas has bought, in the process of buying the radio station.
That's true, Eddie. We arrived to terms last week, and Bill invited me out to one of the St. Barnabas properties right here in Beaver County. That would be Beaver Meadows. Mm-hmm. And we signed some papers, and now it's just in the process of letting the filing run its course of action with the FCC, and probably somewhere in a month or so, or a couple month and a half, it'll be finalized, and then we will get the pleasure of having Mr. Day's signature on our paychecks, which I'm sure looks better than mine.
I doubt that.
I'm seriously going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to be the elephant in the room. What are you going to do?
Well, the subject of paychecks is a natural transition, Eddie, because
You signed mine.
very well, and I'm looking forward to getting one in the future with Bill's autograph on it, and
We want Mark with us.
Yeah.
Mark is Mr. Beaver County, and we need him.
well, they didn't want me at first, and then you know how I have very poor negotiating skills, Eddie.
That's how I got my job here. Yeah.
Well, eventually they settled that I think I have to pay them a little bit each week for the privilege of working here.
But as a radio geek, using the term lovingly, at some point we all did that. We worked for free, or we worked for nothing,
Worked
or
for
we
food.
worked food. Hey, here's a T-shirt. You thought you hung the moon.
Yeah, with a T-shirt that would easily get you a week's
Yeah.
worth of employment. But we're excited. I'm excited about continuing on in the station to help run things and help sell the advertising. Now under St. Barnabas Broadcasting,
Right.
and I guess we'll continue the 36 years, I believe, that I've been in the radio business, 35 of which have been here.
Right.
That's mind-boggling to me.
It is these long periods of time.
We before news, Mr. Day, we were talking about you and your love of radio. You're also a businessman. You're not buying up and you're not getting connected with radio stations out of nostalgia. Have you sorted out the plans of the future for this station on a business side of it?
Oh, absolutely. Those who fail to plan to fail.
Right.
I don't know who said that first, but that's true. And no, we want to continue the good things that BVP and MBA have done. And Mark knows the potholes that we'd like to avoid. But
It's been in them.
yeah, haven't we all? Haven't we all?
Well-
But no, we think there's a big future for what they're doing because it's been successful. It's been very successful here, and we want it to stay successful because my friend knows how to do this.
Well, I would think, and I've always been on the inside, inside looking out, and it's probably like if somebody has a hot rod car or something like that, their hot rod car is always the prettiest of them all. But I would think from somebody else's, outside perspective looking in, that seeing all the you call it the great things that we do, the way that we broadcast the high school football games, the way we have local talk shows with Eddie over here and with Matt and Frank in the mornings, and both the stations and our new FM station have and another FM station coming soon. They literally are part of the fabric of the community. And what else could you acquire that would have that kind of instant clout, instant acceptance into a community? If you bought a drugstore or a furniture store or a car dealership, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But people are only going to buy the product based on perceived value or pricing or things like that. A radio station, and in particular like WBVP and WMBA, is much higher as far as an emotional attachment to our end user, which would be one of two people, either the listener or the advertiser.
Mark, I believe the audience trusts what you've done. And I believe that's been true with MBA as well. You've earned the trust, and we want to continue that. We want people to trust what we're doing and why we're doing it and where are we going with it.
Oh, sure. I mean, and what else? You're buying much more than equipment and licenses
Right.
and the privilege to work with people. You're buying that 73-year track record of this trust and relationship between WBVP, WMBA, and Beaver County in general.
Right, and we need to continue that and build on that.
Of course you do.
To make it bigger and better. And thankfully you're going to help us do that.
I look
That's what
forward
it's
to it.
about. Yeah, we're going to have some fun, and we're going to reach a lot of good people who like what you've done, and I think they're going to like what we're going to do as well, because it's not going to be all that different.
Heritage is not something you can buy.
Hmm.
And Mark, you and I have talked about this more than once. The reason I'm here is because of that. I've worked for major corporations and major radio stations. There is a connection to a community that's a radio station is capable of having.
Right.
But largely, most radio stations, especially radio stations owned by, what was the first thing I told you? It's like the idea of being in the building, and if I've got a question, there's a person in the building that can answer the question. That's rare as hen's teeth in media anymore.
Yeah, it has sadly become that way. We're a victim of our own. Some radio stations, victim of modern technology.
Yeah.
We've upgraded and put in some new pieces of equipment here that would allow us to do that if we wanted to. But we know here at Beaver County Radio that it's not about the network programming. It's about the local programming. There's plenty of outlets for national news.
Sure.
We've survived because we have broadcast and kept people informed of local things going on in Beaver County. And I think that's one of the reasons why you like getting involved here.
I do. I like that a lot. And I like the fact that both of you were talking about you can pick up the phone and call somebody. Being in healthcare, that's rather important.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We want people to be able, whether they're an inpatient or an outpatient, or we have thousands of those, we need to provide them with answers now, and professional answers, and be able to expand their vision of things, and let people know there is hope. And that's what you've brought to the table with these stations, and it fits what we try to have at the table. I mean, St. Barnabas is around for 120 years. There's been a lot of hope given to a lot of people. What we do doesn't always work. That's true in radio. Can we get better at it? We think so. How do we get better? By surrounding ourselves with quality people who know how to get things done. And that's what I think we bring to the table. I'm biased about St. Barnabas, but there are a lot of good health facilities. Is BVP and MBA the best thing that's going on in Beaver County in this area? I believe so. I wouldn't be sitting here otherwise.
I mean, there are some close seconds. Like that Shell plant down there.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, they're right there. They're right there.
They are.
Let's talk about.
Sure.
I think one of the cool things that Bill brings to the table here is his heritage. You used the word heritage, Eddie.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your heritage. Rochester High School, right?
Sure.
Tell us about that childhood. Grew up in Rochester.
It was really kind of growing up there off Delaware Avenue. That was my world. And then it started growing and that sort of thing. But it wasn't elsewhere. I mean, and that was a long time ago. I understand that.
So Delaware is just off of Junction Stretch, right?
That's right. Junction Stretch runs into it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And so it was a great place to grow up. I know we could debate between Rochester and New Brighton and maybe other places as well.
I live in Ambridge. I'm staying out of it.
Well, no, Ambridge is good. My father was part of A.M. Byers.
So
yeah.
So consequently, I've got, and I drove through Ambridge for a couple of reasons this morning, but it brought back wonderful old memories. And we want to retain the past and what we've done and how we've done it in the past, but we want to retain that and amplify it.
Well, he's going to fit in well, and I'll share an example. I think you can take the boy out of Beaver County, but you can never fully remove that Beaver County out of the boy. And the case in point is, he knows that my family and I live in New Brighton, and my kids went to New Brighton High School and all these, that sort of thing. And this past weekend, one of the football games that we carried on WMBA was New Brighton played at Rochester in a football game. And true to form on Saturday morning, I get a text or a call or an email from Bill. Hey, did you see that? Rochester beat your team, ha, ha, ha.
talking smack even now.
He probably hasn't done that in years, and
I
he's
have not.
looking forward
I have
to getting back involved in this pride in community,
Yeah.
pride in Beaver County, and that's what we're all about. And I got to say, that's kind of cool to have the new guy coming in have that mindset about things, to get like a haha, look at, we beat you Friday night football text on Saturday morning.
It means the world to me that it matters enough that you would do that.
Well, thank you to say that. Yeah,
Yeah, no business or anything. This was just
No,
like,
this was all-
This is a personal jab. I like that.
It
Yeah.
was. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. I looked it up ahead of time, so I knew what the score was because I wasn't quite sure. But so then it was an opportunity to get to Mark a little bit, and
now he claims that they won fair and square.
Oh, the winners always say that.
But I can attest to a fact. I think there was a game in the early 90s, that I was at another New Brighton at Rochester game, where Rochester turned off some of the lights whenever New Brighton had the ball. Not all of them. I mean, it was still light a little bit, but
you still had a ground
they won
game,
that time
sure.
as well.
it's whatever it takes.
Hey, winning's about winning.
It's right.
Yeah.
And only Mark would remember that the lights were turned on in Georgia.
Well, it
in
was
New Brighton.
kind of obvious.
Well, yeah, it got a little dark,
Yeah.
but we completed a lot of passes and ran the ball very well in the dark.
Mr. Day, that song's going to be stuck in my head the rest of the day. Don't think I didn't catch that reference in Georgia. Yeah, I heard that.
You heard that, right?
It's going to be that's not,
Good.
Donna Fargo. I'm going to have to look that up.
I'm not sure.
All right, that's going to drive me nuts. You
That's
guys
good.
talk amongst
I
yourselves.
hit a hot spot with the Georgia.
That's the night that I grew up in Alabama. Anything Southern that's referenced by people that grew up here and they don't follow the statement by spitting, that alone makes me happy.
That's good. I like that.
Does it happen fairly often? They
More than I'm comfortable sharing.
Sans-
Yes,
yeah,
actually.
sans saliva, as we call it.
There are different ways to make a point.
Okay.
There are emotional ways to make a point without necessarily verbalizing anything. Yeah, like that. Like that.
Oh my! So another great thing that I'd like to promote here is, Geneva College, right? You came out of, you were a Ram, and then you became a Golden Tornado. I mean, we almost couldn't hope for, a more rooted locally new owner.
Well, we had fun with that. In fact, I was part of where we tried to transition it from Covey or Covenanter to the Golden Tornado, and Cliff Altman. There's a name important down here, I think. But anyhow, Cliff said to me, "Could you help with that?" So I did, but I took some flack over it because the nickname being Covenanter had been around for a long time, not as long as the Golden Tornado. So I did a little research with that. And I've got to say this because I thought about this ahead of time. One of my mentors was Dr. Edwin C. Clark. And Dr. Clark was president of Geneva and helped me with several things. And that was one of them. I can tell you another thing that I've tried to pass on to my staff. One day there was a meeting, and I don't remember what it was about, but Dr. Clark's kind of asked me to come over and talk with him quietly. And so of course I did. And he said, I know you're doing one more thing. You're taking one more telephone call, or you're answering somebody, or you've had one more meeting. But he said, you're making everybody at this affair, this meeting, you're making them late. You are making them late. And I, of course, apologized, but I thought, can you imagine the president of the college is saying to me, don't be late. So I've said this many times, and Dr. Clark has a lot of legacies that we could talk about. But that's one that I'll never forget because I thought he took me aside. And we had gone on some trips and things together with the college, but he said, don't be late. Well, I've tried very hard not to be late since. I can't say I'm perfect at it. But I thought, who gave me that motivation? Yes, I know you're doing one more thing. So I pass that on today for whatever it's worth. Anybody, whoever's listening, don't be late.
That's the Tom Coughlin rule. If you've got a meeting at 9 a.m. and you're not in your seat at 5 till, you're already late.
Yeah, you're already late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good rule.
Yeah.
It's a good rule, and it's one that has helped me. As I say, I'm not perfect at it, but I try hard to do that. But there were some great people. Dr. John McIsaac, who was dean of the college at the time. I mean, I've got wonderful memories of Geneva and the people who were there and those who influenced me.
So I have, to add in my experience with Dr. Clark, the same Dr. Clark, was an interim president when I was there. I was there a little while after you came through. So he filled in for a time, I think, between presidents. They brought him out of retirement. But I never heard that phrase from Dr. Clark, about not being late. And so I thought, I must be pretty good. He doesn't have to correct me. But there's the one thing.
Good.
There's a good reason why I never heard Dr. Clark tell me don't be late for this, and that's because I don't think I went to class to begin with.
That's true. If you don't show up, technically you're never late.
You can't be late if you're not
right.
there.
You're only late if you're actually showing up and disturbing something.
That's right.
Are you tardy?
Good. I have to remember that.
Yeah. Are you tardy? No, I'm absent.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Mr. Day, Vicki Lawrence sang that song, and it was going to
Vicki
drive me
Lawrence did.
absolutely out of my mind if I didn't get that out.
That's good. I'm glad you did that. That helps.
ADD and ADHD pays off every once in a while. It does.
It's a requirement for radio.
It's that. I'm not going to get into it.
You can at any time you want to.
That's why radio's so brilliant. Yes.
The fun thing about this business, and I've shared this with my wife. Right now, as we all know, there's a lot of companies out there that struggle to find employees with the unemployment compensation and COVID fears and things of that sort.
And lazy.
Well, there might be other factors, but it's been a tough road to hoe for employers of all sorts, fast food places and healthcare organizations and auto mechanic shops and retail stores, and they all are short-staffed, restaurants and the like. And my wife works at a daycare center, and we need to give Cindy some credit. She's the vice president of the company, so she is.
She's the reason you've accomplished what you've accomplished.
But she shared the story of how they really struggle to get employees, and employees don't come to work, and they call off, and things of that sort. And, I had to think about it. She says, well, what do you do at the radio station? And I said, wow, you know what? And it made sense after I thought about it. And it's part of that connection, that emotional connection. People that work here, well, they might be, as you so precisely use the phrase, radio geeks.
Yeah.
They might be. I would even go as far as say some of them might even be a little bit weird.
Those that I've known,
they might be creative and eccentric, but
twitchy.
The one thing that's really true here, and it's been this way since the entire time that I've been here, is they all look forward to coming to work. They might be minimum wage workers. They might be the guy that works one shift a week. It might be the most minuscule job in the world, but there's a connection to the radio. It's almost like show business. So we don't have that issue of attendance like you might find right now in other places. And I think that's why. It's because everybody that works here, it's not about the money. It's not about...
Oh, dear Lord, no.
The great equipment. It's not about having a good parking spot or the benefits or whatever it is. It's about being involved.
It's not your sparkling personality. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that's probably not a reason that draws anybody here.
No,
I'm just going out on a limb. I'm going to go ahead and commit.
No, go ahead and do that, Mark.
I think that's actually true. And Eddie, feel free to chime in. Would you?
No, thank you.
Well, not so much about my sparkling personality.
Oh,
but,
effervescent. Yeah.
Oh boy.
I would think that
if you don't love doing radio, you're not going to do it very long, and you find out very quickly what part about radio you love. When you get into radio, if your thing about it is, oh, I get T-shirts and I get concert tickets and I get to meet girls backstage, you're not going to be in radio 6 months. If you don't love the challenge of the craft of doing it, whether it's the craft of scheduling music or the craft of putting together a talk show or what. If you aren't addicted to that craft, you'll go do something else, because especially coming up, you don't make enough money. Nobody in radio starts in radio with a job that's going to support them. You have to give free time basically away.
Well, and it's
you
so
do.
unique.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let's just talk about Beaver County. How many radio stations are there in Beaver County?
Well, there've been a total of 5 through the years, and
Through the year.
and
Right.
And we got 2 right now.
Yeah.
well, you have 3 including
Right. AM, FM.
3 including the FM. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if radio is not your life's calling, you won't be in it very long. If you get into it because you think, well, ego and morning show and people recognize me when I drive through the drive-thru, you're not going to stay. And I saw it plenty of times. People get into radio. If they are addicted to the craft, they might survive. If they're addicted to having people say, ooh, that's cool, you work at a radio station, you're out of it in 6 months, because somebody telling you that's a cool T-shirt still isn't going to pay your rent. If you're addicted to the craft, you don't care about paying your rent. You'll go get a second or a third job to keep doing it. I mean, and Mark, you and I have talked about this. There's no doubt in my mind, if I don't find radio, I'm a Tom Waits lyric. I'm either dead or in prison.
You are a Tom Waits lyric.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's
radio, there's no doubt radio saved my life, because its performance and its structure. There's enough structure to give you a place to go every day, but there's enough difference where the attention deficit doesn't kick in. And I see people, and I've had those jobs. The quickest way to decide if you really love radio is go get a day job and see how long you last. If you're one of those people that's capable of sitting in a cubicle and doing the same thing, I'm going to make this stack of papers turn into 2 stacks of papers. If you can do that, God bless you. Radio people can't do that.
We need those folks as well.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's a good example, Eddie. Those are wonderful jobs, and they're very much needed. Data entry people and
I
accounting
can't do
type
it.
people. But my guess is there are not too many people that are at any place that are emotionally attached to that.
No.
You know what has to happen in order to get people to do that? There has to be a perhaps higher amount of compensation given, because otherwise there is no desire to be involved. No one goes around saying, "Oh, I did 4 pages of data entry today," but they do go around saying, "I work at WBVP," or you know what?
You're talking about a boredom tax.
Right. Yeah, it's there are certain jobs. People that worked in the steel mill
Right.
made big money and they did very, very well, but there probably aren't too many of them that felt that attachment to the mill or to the steel or whatever. It was trading time for money.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, wages do have to be high.
You know, you're listening to the two of you, who popped into my head, but Uncle Ed Shaughnessy, because I knew him. He influenced me. So did Gertrude, for that matter. And both of them did live.
You're speaking of Gert Traub, right?
No, we're talking about his wife.
Okay.
Yeah, Gertrude. Well, and her husband was a dentist.
Yes. Okay.
And,
there you go. But I diverted the subject. Please continue.
No, and in fact, Ed never really liked her to be referred to as Gert. But at any rate, Ed and Gertrude eventually lived and died at St. Barnabas. But Ed had that quality. He could laugh at many things and made us feel good about it. And she was the steadying influence in his life. But then they were from Beaver, Pennsylvania. So it wasn't as though, and I know there are a lot of people in the audience probably never heard of them. But Ed and Gertrude.
Yeah, so give us the background. Ed and Gertrude were, as far as how did you know them? How did you interact with them? Set the stage for us here.
Good. I'm glad to do that. I was introduced to them by one of the founders of BVP way back when. And so we spent time together, and he had great pipes, as we said. I mean, Ed could sell a dictionary. You know, he was really so good at it. Yes.
It's got all the words. From A
Yes,
to
he's
Z.
got all of that, yes. But, you know, a wonderful guy and a personality, and he never forgot his roots. His roots were Beaver County, and we had great fun with that. And his children, the same thing. We've kept in touch with the daughters, and there was a son involved. It was in the military, all that sort of thing. They're great, solid people, and that's what we have here in Beaver County. Not everybody, but a lot of people. We're including Mark in the solid.
I made the cut, Ed. Did you hear that?
Even a blind squirrel gets a nut once in a while.
There you go.
No,
There
we've
you go.
been very fortunate that way, and there have been a lot of folks like that. And you know, and so sitting here with you today, then I can't help but reminisce. I can't help it. It's the people that have gone before us, and I think they're counting on us continuing it, and doing a good job. I hope so, anyhow.
So where are we? I'm trying to look at the time, Ed.
Why?
Oh, I don't want to interrupt something. So I was getting one of my favorite stories of the old.
I've cashed out on the format days ago. You do what you guys want.
See how I used my name days ago?
Right.
I worked that. You think that was an accident?
One time I
Hey.
used the phrase, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's a bright day ahead for Beaver County."
That should be on a plaque.
That was at the
I
FM
tell
launch
you, they
party a
should.
couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So one of my favorite stories of the old days, and it's always fun to reminisce, and this concerns both WBVP and Bill Day. When Bill worked with us, and I'll let him tell the story. The station was located a block south of where we are right now. It was at 1216 7th Avenue.
Okay.
This is 1316.
Right.
It was in the building that now has Vocelli Pizza in the bottom floor.
If you're watching on Facebook, I just pointed in the direction for some weird reason.
So in the third floor of that building, and there are apartments up there now,
Mhm.
it was where the radio station was, and that's where it was when Bill worked there. And I guess they had a problem with the air conditioning.
Ooh.
So they had to keep the windows open, and he was talking about how he would hear things from the alley, and it sounded like car accidents and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I know he wasn't thinking about this, but tell us about those early days and the windows and the sounds and those sorts of things.
We had to climb 3 stories essentially to get there. It seemed like 6, but it was probably only 3. When I first got there, and usually the Studio C, which was the back side of the building, if you will, those windows were open a lot. Well, I wasn't there very long, and I could hear the breaking of glass. And I thought, what in the world's going on here? Well, I don't know whether it's a state regulation or not, but whiskey bottles and probably beer bottles, I don't know, were all crushed. And they were crushed by throwing them against the building beside the BVP building. And that was how they were reduced to nothing.
It was both early day recycling.
That's right. That's right.
And at the
That's
same
good.
time, and both of you talked about this earlier in the interview, created, I'm sure, a nice sound effect library.
Yeah.
We need stuff being smashed.
You know,
I got you.
Hurry up,
Yeah.
get a microphone out there.
Smashed and smashed. Yes. Yeah. I'd never seen that before, and
And this would have been from, there was a bar or a restaurant in the lower floor then called the Rio Grill, was it not? Okay.
correct. That's
So
correct. That was
the theory was when the bottles were empty, they took them out of the Rio Grill and smashed them
right.
on the wall
'Cause
next
it's-
door?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not as though WBVP was smashing these.
Right, we don't smash them anymore. We just throw them in the bin out back.
It's recycling.
Did it ever come up to be something of a problem? Because I've worked at radio stations that were nearby taverns, and sometimes that's not the best idea.
Well, there were a lot of the people who were, let's say, enjoying a lot of strong drink
Yeah.
were not able to climb 3 stories.
Oh, so there was a weird safety system in
There-
place.
sort of, yeah.
Okay.
But I thought of all places, and then who popped into my head, but Sil the Pill Sergi, and You've probably heard lots of
Sil
stories.
Sergi
I've heard
was a
stories.
gentleman that worked. He was an evening announcer in the
Yes,
late 50s, early 60s.
yes.
One of his more famous. He was a character, and at one point in time, sadly, I guess his house caught on fire. And I think he lived on College Hill,
That's right.
and he was on the air. And what most normal people would probably, turn the microphone off and go home and help fight the fire.
Right.
As I am told by the historians of town, Sil got on the air and said, "Hey, there's a hot dog roast at my house."
Oh yeah.
Ken
was-
Britton, I believe, he
yeah.
was a historian that helped me when we wrote the book 2 or 3 years ago, and he was in charge over at the Beaver Falls Historical Museum for a while. He was the one that had heard that story firsthand.
Still the pill up on the hill.
Yes, Sil Sergi, one of the very often talked about, announcers from back in that era, which would also included Jim Reynolds, Charlie Farrell.
That's right.
Let's see, Chuck Wilson would have still been at the station. Ernie Klein would have been here.
George Allen.
George Allen, Gert Traub, who we talked about earlier. That was just an amazing lineup. But Sil was probably best known for the fun. He was the comedy relief type guy.
He was light. Everything, just about everything he did was light. But he had a line for almost everything. Crazy guy, but fun. But those are. I'm sure there are some people in our audience today who remember those folks. I hope so, at any rate. But they're part of the reasons we're sitting here today. They did good things.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. One of the fun little pieces of history is, if you put yourself in the shoes of Frank Smith and Tom Price and Charles Ondurka, the founding trio, if you will, and all the people that were around them.
Right.
Now, even nowadays, selling advertising is, even as good as we do things, it can be somewhat challenging. There's a lot of options for the dollar. But put yourself in their position.
Right.
1948, May 25th is when they turned the transmitter on. They're now in the streets of Beaver Falls and in Beaver County everywhere trying to ask people and get people to give them money for putting 60-second commercials on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to have been a monumental task. Nowadays, everybody knows who we are. Most people do.
Right.
We've been around for 73 years, and WNBA has been around 64 or something like that. And so there isn't a lot of question as to who the station is and what do you do. Most of the questioning is just about price.
Right.
How much is it? If it's, maybe I'll take a couple. What do you have to offer? Well, back then they wouldn't have known what the deal is.
Back then, you were selling an intangible. You were selling vibration in air.
So here's where I was going with it. The gentleman, that first group of people who formed WBVP, and the same thing would be true at WNBA in 1957 with the Miners Broadcasting Service Corporation from Pottsville, PA.
That's right.
Great quality group of people there as well. They were the ones that were instrumental in gaining enough momentum in those early days to simply give it life for next year. It wasn't easy. There was a radio station that started on January 31st of 1949 in Rochester that not many people know about, and it was WRYO.
WRYO, yes.
Yeah. WRYO was at 10:50 a.m., and the frequency still exists. It's out in Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about dial position, 1050 would have been much more attractive
Mm-hmm.
than 1230 or 1460.
Right.
The lower the frequency, the less interference there is.
Right.
Plus, being in the middle of the dial never hurts either. But we were reminiscing earlier, Bill and I, and that station was gone by 1953. So it was not a turn the transmitter on and get rich type of a thing.
Well, it was hard to sell radio. There was the Beaver County Times. There was even a newspaper in Aliquippa, I think, called the Evening Times. and we had the Beaver Falls News Tribune. So it was a more of a, if I'm going to run an ad, it'll be a piece of paper. It'll be on a piece of paper where you can feel, smell, and touch it,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, do whatever you want to do with it. Along comes radio, and they go, "What? Well, how do I know anybody's listening?"
Right.
Well, some people, the supermarkets were early on, I think, in saying we can do that, and the automobile dealers too, but especially the supermarkets. Go there on a Thursday, and there'll be a good deal.
Yeah, it does make you think about like the monumental effort that those guys would have put forth, those companies, those initial companies, Miners Broadcasting in Ambridge, and well, I guess it was known as Beaver Valley Broadcasting. That was the name of their company when they incorporated here in. No, I'm remiss. It was known as WBVP Inc. Later on, under a different ownership, they took on the name of Beaver Valley Broadcasting. But to think about having a brand new thing, you know, did people even have radios in their home to listen? Some of them probably did. A lot of them probably did, because KDK came on the air and they did the first broadcast in 1920, and their claim to fame, they were licensed by the. This is a fun trivia question. The Federal Radio Commission, not the Federal Communications Commission.
I didn't know that.
In 1929,
Wow.
prior to the Communications Act of 1934, which established the FCC as a governing body, there was and I don't think, I'm trying to think of the last. It was Federal Radio Commission, I believe. But the last word might have been something that literally like a handful of people
Right.
to decide what to do with.
It's like, what's this
Licensing.
new thing?
Yeah, we better license it.
And I don't know that this is for sure the case, but I would have to guess that given the age of when that happened, 100 years ago, over 100 years ago now, that the number of stations in the United States that were licensed by that first group, the Radio Commission, KDK would almost have to be
One of the,
maybe the last one left.
that's probably true. I was thinking too, Mark, as you were saying that, about think of the things since you've been involved with BVP, that the amount of development that has happened at Geneva College, the amount of development that happened with Penn State being here. Think about what has happened with healthcare in this area and the role that radio has played in making these entities successful and progressive. Because at one time, there were a series of small hospitals in the area, and they did good things. But along comes bigger ideas, bigger people, able to serve more people. And
Well, they have to be
It's a real
sold the
accomplishment.
idea. And
yeah, but radio helped with all that.
right.
What you did
Being
there
able
really
to communicate
Right.
the new idea, the new concept, the benefits of this new development, be it for Geneva or what we now know as Heritage Valley.
helped. Mm-hmm.
And it started out as the medical center, and that was kind of, as I recall, that was when I first got to Geneva. That was they had just about finished that consolidation.
Yeah, because there were all the small hospitals,
Mhm.
Rochester, New Brighton, Beaver Falls, Aliquippa. There were a lot of small hospitals. Okay, so some progressively thinking people, I think. I guess someone could debate that. But Michael Baker, and other people said, well, let's have one really big hospital, and where are we going to put it? And the decision was, we'll put it in Beaver. Well, that worked, I think. That worked. People could debate it, but there are hospitals such as Elwood City that doesn't exist today.
Oh, sure. And you mentioned Aliquippa, and that
Aliquippa does not.
easily, just in the time that we've all been and worked here, we've seen change there. And I don't want to put a negative spin on it. It's
but
no longer there. The services are simply being offered, and the people
Right.
now go to other
For
facilities.
one reason or another, it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happens. But the influence that you've had on this area and this station has had is tremendous. So it's a heritage that we want to continue.
Oh, it
Make
is
it bigger
fun.
and better.
Yeah.
We can do that.
You know, one of the best stories of influence is, you know, way back in the early days of radio, it's a well-documented incident was when they did the broadcast of War of the Worlds. You know, it was all theater of the mind,
Absolutely.
and it was so strong that people perceived it to be true.
Motivated people. And it still is a motivator if we do it right and use it right.
And I believe another example is in 1972. It's either 1971 or 72. The federal government decided that this medium of radio was just too powerful. It was too influential.
Mm-hmm.
It controlled people's minds too much. And therefore, it was now going to be illegal to advertise cigarettes and the pricing and whatever. So the last cigarette ad on radio aired, I can't remember if it's New Year's Day 1972 or maybe New Year's Day 1973. They're one of the networks, be it ABC or NBC or one of them, paid big fines and purposefully did it so that they could say they were the last network to air a commercial. They did it on New Year's Day. And the funny thing is I can't even tell you exactly who did that.
What was the brand of cigarette, though?
That's a good question.
Pall Mall, Pall Mall. Back then, it could have been Camel Unfiltered. It could have been
Lucky Strike.
or Lucky Strike. It could have been
Didn't we
anything.
provide Lucky Strike to the military?
Huh.
I think we did that. I think the federal government said that if you're going to serve in the military, the Army, or whatever, you get free cigarettes. So I'll try not to get started on smoking,
So, you know,
but I will.
I know you could probably pontificate for a little while.
Long time.
And you have a little bit of that going on now, you know, with,
Freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, with a
You know,
lot
to
of
mask or not to mask.
right,
That is the question.
you know, without putting too much of a spin on things,
A viral Shakespeare in there.
it is
Yes.
true, though. A lot of the behavior that we see out there regarding what you should do with the COVID or whatever is driven not so much by the disease or the condition or the vaccination or lack thereof. It is driven by what people are hearing and what they're being told through
Absolutely.
various mass media outlets.
Sure.
Perception.
And I wonder, like, what would happen if you could somehow pull that out of the equation, and they would, and it's a lot of different channels. It's social media and a lot of other things that are creating
Government.
the
Yeah.
publicity and the hype and about the situation. I think at times is maybe greater than the actual thing.
Oh, I think that's true quite often. I think people's reaction to stuff can be far more detrimental than the stuff they're reacting to. And that can be any subject. It's how I make my living, causing people to react to stuff just because I said it.
Right. Just imagine if we went on the air. I mean, just think
No,
if this
we-
possibly would ever happen, and
We are on the
we
air.
would say something like, "We're expecting anywhere between
Yes, we
12
are.
and 18 inches of snow by tomorrow."
Yes.
Right.
I mean, what happens? The snow it probably never comes, but
half the time.
instantaneously you manipulated people's behavior, and I share that as a positive example, not so much of a poor weather forecast,
Right.
but how seriously people adhere to and take in the words that they hear that they take in through their ears.
The believability of that is really something. Let me put in a plug for smoking. No smoking.
Oh, okay.
Those listening to us may wonder if this is true, but the statistics that we follow are that annually about 480,000 people die every year from tobacco-related products. Almost 500,000 people. Is the public interested in not smoking and the problems that come from tobacco products? The public really, from our experience, has not been all that interested in it. American Cancer Society tries to do things to get us to modify our behavior.
Right. If at best people are sort of like nonplussed about it. If somebody wants to smoke, they smoke, and
That's
not a
right.
big deal. No
exactly
one needs
right.
to preach the gospel to them about why they need to quit, or it's just kind of
Exactly right.
they view it like it's their choice.
That is. And their choice is to smoke. And, okay, so 480,000 people die annually. Well, I'm not going to. I'm going to live a long time, and smoking won't. I know Joe Smo had lived to be 104, and he smoked every day of his life. Okay, so my plug is think about it. Think about it. If we can use our air to help people live better and live longer, we're crazy if we don't do that. So that's my little plug about smoking.
I love it.
You guys are looking at me like I got something to say. I ain't got nothing to say.
Oh, wow.
You, both of you, just gave me probably the most pleasant hour of doing this that I've had in a long time. In part,
See that your influence.
Are you sure, Ed? Because I know you had the guy that he saw a lantern fly somewhere.
no. Hey, that's
He
serious
spotted.
business.
No, that's
Don't
right.
muck-
He spotted a lantern
No,
fly.
it's a spotted lantern fly.
Oh.
You were demonstrating passive rather than active listening.
I got you. I know that I know there's things about those lantern flies,
that was-
especially after you happen to see one.
Right.
Squish them.
Squish them. Okay.
Well,
I
some
got
of them
you.
hold that lantern out.
Here we are making fun of it. Oh my goodness.
I wouldn't do that.
I've got about a minute left before we have to do something,
Wonderful.
I guess constructive, and I got nothing to contribute. So you guys did this hour, you close it.
Well, Mark, and I'm sure people in Beaver County know this. Mark is a jewel, as is his family. And what has happened here, and the fact that we're sitting here talking, is it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because there are good people involved, and he knows what he's doing. And I'm proud to call him a friend.
It's a pleasure to have you aboard. Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you, working for you, I should say.
No, with. I like the with better. And the fellow with the crazy earphones, we like him as well.
See, you just met me. Wait till you get to know me.
Well, I know. I've been warned.
Oh, have you? That preemptive, keep your hands and feet away from his mouth speech.
Something like that, yes.
All right, it's Teleforum. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Day. Thank you, Mr. Boss. Continued boss. I got to sort this out.
Right.
The news is next.
Legendary radio since
Hang on, I
1948.
gotta
It's
do-
1230 WBVP Beaver Falls and 1460 WMBA Ambridge, coming to you live from the St. Barnabas Studios.